Hey everybody, I wanted to do a quick tutorial here to talk about some of the things I do to set up my game with macros and with tokens that answer some questions I've gotten on the internet about how I set up my game because I think people are looking to see what other GMs do. I'm not an expert. I learned most of this on YouTube, just trial and error, figuring out what I like. But people wanted to see, wow, you've done so much to set up this Tomb of Annihilation game that you're running. Can you show what it would take to set that up from scratch? What they would do without doing a lot of data entry? It seems like I've bought a lot of content. What do they do if they own that content only in D&D Beyond and they don't want to buy it a second time over in Roll20? Is that possible? The answer is yes. Let me show you how I do it. So I've got a pro account, and I'm going to be using some pro features to speed up some things around here. But if I create a brand new game, we're going to go through the experience of creating a brand new Roll20 game that doesn't have anything else loaded into it. So I'm going to do a tutorial game, just going to name it that, and I'm going to click the character sheet for 5th edition, which I do to make sure that all the stats are there and ready to go. And I'm going to add some token markers. So I bought easy to read token markers, which is a sort of pretty good graphic way of showing that. I'm going to launch the game, and it's going to create a blank 5th edition Roll20 game. And I'm going to do my basic setup, which is I always go in and I set the size of the avatars down here to be not regular but names only. And I turn on advanced keyboard shortcuts, and I turn off the chat tech because I don't want that. I use Zoom when I'm chatting with my friends and playing D&D. I don't use the stuff built into Roll20. I find that Zoom is just more reliable. So I've got that set up. But as you'll see in the journal, I've got no monsters. I've got no characters. I've got nothing to work with here. I've got no macros loaded in. So what do I do? Well, the first thing is I turn over to my Transmogrifier. So that is not the greatest name, but that's a way of copying content from one D&D game into another D&D game in Roll20 if you're a pro user. So I use the Transmogrifier. Here's my tutorial game, and I can drag stuff from one of my other games over into here. Now, I've got a game set up, which is my Tomb of Annihilation game. And that has, a whole bunch of monsters that I've pre-bought. But what happens if I don't have those monsters? Well, let's go and I'll kind of show what I've got set up. On the left here, I've got my encounter builder in D&D Beyond. It's just right here in the My Encounters area. I'm going to create a new encounter and say this is an encounter for 5 second-level characters so that it does the HP calculation correctly. I'm going to name it Tutorial Encounter, and I'm going to go and I'm going to add an orc. Great. And I'm going to add a Dolgrim. And the reason I'm adding a Dolgrim is because it's from Eberron, and I only own Eberron over here in D&D Beyond. I don't own it in Roll20. So if I take a Dolgrim, let me just close this little sidebar and add it over here. Say let's have 2 orcs and 2 Dolgrims. That makes it a hard encounter according to whatever calculator they've got here. That sounds good. Close that. Save that encounter. Now it's up. And you can see D&D Beyond is active. Right, so D&D Beyond believes it's here. So I can have the Beyond script active by clicking it there. I can have the Beyond script active by clicking it here. I go over to the chat. I can, roll the orcs, great axe, and it shows up. I can roll the Morning Star for the Dolgrim, and it shows up. But what I don't have is the tokens, and I don't have the initiatives and stuff. So I can get those by using the Transmogrifier for the orc, because I know there's an orc in Tomb of Annihilation. But I'm going to go and I'm going to have to create the token for the Dolgrim. So I'm going to step through how I do that. So first step, I go over to the Transmogrifier, and I'm just going to grab the orc from another game. So I'm going to go and choose the Tomb of Annihilation game. I'm going to go and I can find on page orc. There it is. So I'm going to grab the orc, and I'm going to I think I missed. I'm going to grab the orc and I'm going to drag it onto this game, close the Transmogrifier, and there it is. It's been moved over. Though I kind of want to rename this folder Monsters. Right? So if I drag the name of the orc and I put it in here, Now I can have 1 orc, 2 orcs. And it's nice and it's got all the setup. It even has the stats because I bought it on Roll20. But for the Dolgrim, I don't have a Dolgrim anywhere in Roll20, so I'm going to have to create that from scratch. So the first thing I got to do is I got to find some arts. For the Dolgrim, I'm going to go and I'm going to open this up in Roll20. Hey, look, it's got the art. It even has a Beyond 20 button, which is kind of nice. It's got a Beyond 20 button for I can display the art here, but I want the art in a token. So let me show what I do for that. So I'm going to drag that to my desktop. So now I got the PNG files on my desktop. And I'm going to go over to a separate app here in a separate tab called Token Stamp. I'll link to that tool. So in Token Stamp, I can quickly drag, this guy here. And actually, that color choice I kind of like. So I've got the ability to have, different types of tokens and whatnot. But we'll just go with one of these nice standard default ones. Right. So I can go and I can pick the background color and I can change other things about this token. But basically, it makes this Dolgrim here, and he's got a Morning Star and a crossbow. And I kind of like showing that. And I think he's not that big of a guy, so maybe I'll have him kind of fit in there. And now I right-click, save image as, take that, drag it to here. Now I've got the token, and I can drag it onto my Roll20, and it's going to upload it right there. Great. Let's make them about that size. Now I'm going to have to do a little bit of data entry here, so I'm going to have to add a character. I'm going to call it Dolgrim. I'm going to say that I do have the art for him now because I dragged it over. So I'm going to drag the art for what it looks like in here. I'm going to save those changes. On the abilities and attributes, I'm going to add its initiative bonus, which is from D&D Beyond. Let's see what this guy's had, a +2 dexterity, +2 for initiative. Great. Give him a 2 for that. Let's see, he's got 15 armor class and 13 hit points. Okay, great. So let me go to this token, say it represents a Dolgrim, use the name. It's got 13 hit points. I use the blue bar for AC. Save. There it is. It's ready to go. So double click on the Dolgrim, edit, and I can use the selected token to save this token into here. So now it's forever loaded into this little character thing. I'll move it into the monsters. I can even sort those monsters if I got a lot of them. And then the Dolgrim, maybe I'll make that picture a zoom in on his face or something. The Dolgrim can be pretty much the same as any of these other guys. So I can go and add a turn and add him to the initiative, and there he is. Right, add turn, and I could edit the initiatives. Or if I've got my initiative macros, those should be all set up. So here's another trick I learned on the Roll20 forums. I can go to the Transmogrifier, and I've got a character in my other game called, let me go grab him. His name is Major Macro. It's probably named AAA Macro just so that it sorts up higher. So I can drag over Major Macro, and now he's over here. I throw him in the handouts area, and I edit him and I make him visible to all players in case anybody else wants the macros that are in here. And I go to the abilities and attributes, and I show them in the macro bar. Let's grab those first. I'm going to rename them just to give them shorter names. So I'm going to name it Init. But now I can click on the Dolgrim, roll Init. There he is rolling at a +2. We got a critical hit. Roll on the Orc, he rolls at a +1. Roll on the second Orc, he rolls at a 14. Descending, do that. So I do my initiative here with the things that have the tokens here. And then in the encounter itself, did I save that encounter? I think I did, yeah. So in the encounter itself, I can go and say, all right, it's the Dolgrim's turn here. And that one's going to be over here, and it's going to use its Morning Star, and that pops up. Right? So that's how I run my games. Abilities and stuff over here, and initiative and tokens over here. Pretty simple. I'm just going to go rename these something nice and short so it doesn't take up a lot of space on my bar. So next, let's talk about dynamic lighting and status tokens. So you saw that I loaded up my custom marker, token marker set, but going and finding, there's a lot of them. So going and finding the one I want is actually kind of difficult. So what I did, I bought these easy to read token markers from the marketplace, and you can see that it has sort of this, the names have a full text name here, and some of them are using Pathfinder names and some of them are using D&D names. So what I went, I took and copied and pasted and put them in a text file, and I oriented it towards a macro, but that macro requires something special. It requires an API script. So I'm going to exit the game pretty quickly here. I'm going to go into its settings, and I'm going to go into the API scripts. This uses an API script called Token Mod, made by the Aaron, who you may recognize from the Roll20 forums. He's very awesome and makes some pretty cool API scripts, which are all coded in JavaScript. I know how to code JavaScript. I don't want to code JavaScript for Roll20, so I just follow tutorials on the internet just like everybody else. But I know how to modify them a little bit, so I was able to tune and tweak them for my token marker names. But I go to token markers and I add this script. It's got to reboot and it's got to set up a sandbox. I don't know what that means, but once that loads, that means it loaded correctly. So I can go back into my game, launch the game. So now I have access to these token mod settings. So I'm going to go into some of the pre-coded ones that I've got that I keep around so I don't lose them in major macro. So set status, showing the macro bar there. Let me rename it, set status. So this now, when I click on an orc, let me zoom in on the orc so you can see the... Is that big enough? That's not big enough. Let me make this really big. So here's the orc, here's the turn order. So I'm going to set status, and it's going to go through alphabetically sorted, so it's easy for me to find them now. Say if he gets a stunned status effect on him, and I can submit, and now there he is stunned. So that was a lot easier for me than going and picking from this actually unsorted, hard to pick list. So that's great. If I ever want to remove it or add like a number of turns, I can still do that because now it's highlighted in here somewhere. There it is. So I can hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on my keyboard to kind of mark how many turns are left on it, or like levels of exhaustion or something like that. And I can also click it to get rid of it. But the way that works, and I'll link to this, I found it on a good YouTube reference on how to use token mod. So in major macro, I can open this up and I can say set status. Here it is. It's just token mod. Take the selected ID and then set status marker and then question mark, a big which marker, if this then that, if this then that kind of chooser for all of these select tokens that I like using, only the ones that I like. So I can quickly go into major macro and I got a clear status one and I got a couple other fun ones that I'll show you how I use them. So here I'm going to set the status and I can clear the status. Go clear status. I got this fatality one. I got lighting. Right, so I'm going to go and change the colors on these to make them easier for me to pick out. Fatality I'm going to make red. Lighting I'm going to make yellow. Great. So I'm going to clear the status. I can set the status on an orc to what? Yeah, sure. Bardic Inspiration. I can clear the status on him by clicking him and hitting clear status, and they all go away, even if I've got multiple selected. So he's charmed. What else is he? He's charmed and he's hexed. He's hex charmed. Awesome. But then I can clear status on him and it all goes away. I can also do a FX, kind of do that. That's kind of cool. Clear the status. I can also change the lighting. So for that, I'm going to have to turn on the dynamic lighting on this. So I'm going to go to the... It doesn't want to let me use the old dynamic lighting. Oh, I like the old dynamic lighting better. Oh, I don't like that. Here it is. Page details. Maybe it is here. Here's the old dynamic lighting. Excellent. So advanced fog of war. Let's do dim light, dynamic lighting, force line of sight, update only on drop, restrict movement. That's usually how I roll out. All right, so now I've got it set up so that I've got my GM window on the left and my player window on the right. So this player, I've taken Zarek and I've edited it and made it so that it's editable by this player that's in an incognito window. So I'm going to take the token for Xeric, drag it over. Now I got to edit it. It's one, I got to give it sight to make sure that it's a player. So there's Xeric can see himself. And then I'm going to click on Xeric, and I've got a little token mod macro called lighting, where I can pick between a couple of different settings so I can really quickly switch between the settings. So if I give Xeric a torch, then over here Xeric can move and go see that there are, in fact, some orcs there. So super useful. And then if Xeric ever, turns off the torch and goes maybe back to the dark vision that Xeric has, because Xeric is a half-orc, there we go, dim vision of what's going on in this room. So there's some useful stuff. Let's just go kill everybody with fatality, right? So I've got some useful stuff in there to speed up my game, and also some tips on how to move over and handle initiative, even, and do combat if you've got your setup the way I do, which is I'm really heavily dependent on Beyond 20, so that I can kind of own my content in one place rather than in all places. This becomes really useful when you start thinking about using other virtual tabletop tools. I've been checking out some of the other ones. Knowing that I still own all of my content in D&D Beyond and can use it regardless of which tabletop I use is something that I really like. Cool. Well, I hope that helped. I'm going to do more tutorials here over time, so come back and check it out. Ask any questions you want. I'd love to share and love to see what you guys are doing. Thanks.